Hi, my name's John of JWH Millinery and welcome back to my channel. I hope you've got your sunglasses ready because this piece is going to be blinding. Absolutely blinding. We have thrown hundreds of Swarovski crystals onto this piece. So excited, and this is what it looks like. So this piece, which is covered in hundreds of Swarovski crystal flatbacks, is inspired by one of the drag queens from RuPaul's Drag Race, Latrice Royale. Now, in the background you'll be able to see her and the actual outfit that this was inspired by. Latrice is large, she's in charge, she's chunky, yet she's funky, and they're her own words, not mine. What we did is we took the colours, we took the sparkles, and then we added wearable tech. So this piece in the middle, this is like kind of like the main piece, and hidden in all the crystals are some LEDs. Now I'm going to turn the lights off. Hopefully you'll be able to see the LEDs flashing. I am filming this at like 1 o'clock in the afternoon with all the blinds down, and my neighbours are probably thinking, what is going on inside that house? So yes, I'm going to turn the lights down and hopefully be able to see that. So here is a close-up of the hat with all the LEDs flashing. Now this piece just here, this is the bit that controls everything, and this is wired up to each of the LEDs. Now as you can see, they're in a chasing pattern, and the code will make sure this changes. It goes faster, it goes slower. The lights, as you can see, are chasing each other, and this is what it does. Now this is amazing to say that it's all done with stitches. The conductive thread that we use will wire from each of the petals to the LED, and it's all hidden with these crystals here, and as you can see, it makes a pretty effect. So for this tutorial you're going to need the following: 1 metre of white or ivory cinema, 1 metre of navy cinema, 1 metre of aqua cinema, and 1 metre of light blue cinema. You're also going to need some clear AB Swarovski flatbacks. You're also going to need these in aquamarine and sapphire, and we have used the 4mm. To add to this you will need navy grosgrain ribbon, a black headband which is about 1 inch wide, and make sure it's got some sort of fabric or satin over the top, and some spring wire. For the wearable tech you are going to need 1 LilyPad Arduino 3-to-8 main board, 1 LilyPad power supply, a pack of blue LEDs by LilyPad, some conductive thread, an FTDI basic breakout, and a USB mini B cable. All these will be linked down below, especially the wearable tech. Each individual item will be linked so you know exactly what you're getting. The block that we used was the FHBS01 Salter hat block from Hatblocks Direct. You will also need to download some software from Arduino, which was also linked down below. Start by covering your block and the tip in some cling film, and what this will do is this will prevent any moisture getting into the block, and it'll just prolong the life of the block. Then take your ivory cinema and cut that into 4 squares large enough to cover the block, and dampen these. Place them over the block which has been covered in cling film, and press this into the well of the block and just secure around the edge with a couple of pins. Then you need to place the tip into the well and start to mould the cinema, ensuring you eliminate as much of the creasing, a lot of the bunching as possible. You may need to remove the tip to see what you're doing, and you may need to use different layers of the cinema, so you might need to take a couple off, make sure that's nice and smooth, then do the next layer, just to get that really nice, smooth, crisp finish. Once you're done with that, make sure you put the tip into the well and turn the block upside down, and just block the rest of the cinema as much as you possibly can. Don't worry too much, because We will be steaming this flat later. Once you're happy with what you've got, pin into place and leave this to dry completely. Once this is fully dry, remove the block and lay on some calico. And then using another piece of calico or a tea towel, steam the cinema flats. Now I do this on a table, as if I was using an iron board, it can sometimes leave a pattern in the cinema, so what we'd want is that really nice, smooth, crisp finish. Once it's flat, leave this to dry, and this should be really stiff. If it's not really stiff, I would add some stiffener to it at this point, let that dry and re-iron that flat again, just to get it really nice stiff, because we're going to be sewing a lot into this, and the stiffer it is, the more shape it will keep. Once that's dry, decide on the shape that you want. Now we chose a kite shape for this piece, so mark that out, cut it, wire it and edge this with some spring wire. Taking the remaining colours of cinema, you'll need to make some bias cinema strips. Don't worry about the wastage though, as we'll be using a lot of these strips in the next tutorial. If you're just going to be making this, then you're just going to need one, maybe two of each of the colours. So to do this, first of all, you're going to need to find the bias of the cinema and fold that first bias line flat. Then fold this on itself again at the height you need. Now we need 1 inch strips, so we have folded them 4 inch high, and what that will do is that will give us a 1 inch strip later on. Pin this into place along the length, making sure that you really press on the folds. Then fold this up again, measure to make sure it's still the correct height, and pin this again into place. Once you're happy with all your folds, open the cinema and cut along the fold lines. Just make sure you don't use your best scissors for this. Then take one of the strips and fold into half lengthways, pressing down on the crease. Open this up and fold each of the edges in on itself to the middle crease, then bring the outer edges together and press together. The heat from your hands should help mould this, but for now avoid using a steam iron, as this could activate any stiffener in the cinema. Use 1 or 2 of the navy strips to cover the edges of the base, and check out the video linked above to see how we did this. Now here comes the slightly complicated bit, and if you're not adding the wearable tech into this hat, then you can skip this section altogether. This image here is what we are trying to add to the hat. The inner piece, which looks like a flower, is the main part of this circuit. It holds a program which sets the sequence of the LEDs flashing. Take note of which end of the LED is attached to which petal, and if you are making this, ensure that you're following this plan. Unless you know coding, and I don't, I got a lot of help with doing this, but if you do understand coding and you do understand circuitry, then you can change this to however you want. But if this is the first time that you're using this, I would suggest you follow this plan. It is quite easy to change, but you will need to reprogram the board. To program the board, you will need a FTDI basic breakout, a USB mini B cable, and you're going to need to download the Arduino software, and a link to this is in the description box below. Once the software is downloaded, open it up and paste the software code into it and click verify. This should be fine. I have verified this coding already. It works perfectly for me. I have linked a Dropbox file in the description box which has a code to copy and paste into your sketch. Using some basic glue, add a dab to the bottom of all the components and position these on the hat and let them dry. But try not to cover any of the metal sections, as this will hamper any electrical connections. Once dry, using the conductive thread, stitch a line from each connection to the correct petal. This works best if the LEDs are closer to the petals. I did mine about 1 inch away from the petals. What I would do is make sure you're constantly checking the positioning of your threads, as you can easily short the LEDs. Do not cross the threads at any point. It's fine as you are sewing without any power, so that is fine, but make sure that any threads, any stray threads, any cut off threads, anything is snipped away. Check it, keep checking it, making sure that none of the threads touch each other. At each connection point, ensure you go through the pins several times to get the connection tight as you can to the thread. And what I do, as you can see here, is I'm going and I'm ending my thread, I'm going through and I'm looping my thread and I'm knotting that thread off at the connection point to make sure that is really nice and tight. Now, attach the FTDI cable to the main board and download the program onto that board. It should start the LEDs twinkling in a chase sequence, so if it doesn't, check your connections. And if you're happy with your connections, check the correct pins have been used, as it is easy to make a mistake. I mean, this is why we're doing it at this point. We're not going to do it later. Check it now, follow the plan, and make sure that the correct positive and negative is to the correct number on the pin. It's easy to make a mistake, so just make sure you do that. And using the power from the computer, you'll be able to see which pins are working, because it's all separate. So maybe pin 3s might not be working, but the rest of them should work. So you know it's just pin 3. If none of them are working, there is a problem somewhere. So check your connections. Just keep going. Do this now, because we won't be able to do this later on. On the underside of the piece, attach the power supply, ensuring your positive and your negative connections match to the positive and the negative connections on the main board, and sew this down like the LEDs. The remaining 2 connections on your power supply, I just sewed down with regular white thread. There is no need to use them. It works perfectly without them, so just sew them down with some white thread. Once again, check your connections. Pop a battery in, see if it works. If it doesn't work, there's a problem somewhere. If it was working previously and now it's no longer working, it's obviously a connection to your power supply. Keep checking your connections. Once it's working correctly, remove the battery. Now we're going to cover the dome in an assortment of Swarovski crystal flatbacks. Do this however you want, but ensure that you cover the stitches. And why we do this is the glue will act as a sealant against moisture once it's dried. Here we did like an abstract angular pattern. We made sure we covered around the LEDs, so then when the LEDs are flashing, the crystals catch that and it amplifies the LED a little bit more. I use my little homemade tool to pick up crystals, which is basically a pencil with some blue tack on the end. There are other crystal picking up devices on the market, but you know, I like using my thing and it works perfectly fine. Once you've done that, set this as dried fully. I would suggest you leave this overnight before the next step, because once it's dry, you need to check your connections again. Double check. I had a problem at this point and my connections weren't working, so I then went back in. I added more stitches on the inside and I had to poke up a few of the crystals to get my thread through. It was a bit of a nightmare, but I did get it working again. So but I wasn't checking my connections all the way through. So make sure you check your connections all the way through and you can spot a problem as it comes at the end. Using your bias cinema strips, arrange these on the headpiece however you want. What we've done is we've steamed the cinema strips around the edge of the dome, and we've just tucked the ends of the cinema strips into the fold of the strip and press that down a little bit. You can do this however you want, but we did this to reflect the waves in Latrice's wig. So each of the strip down using some white thread, as you can hide your stitches on the top, but it's harder to hide coloured thread in white cinema. If you can see any of the white thread in your coloured cinema, then I basically just use a Sharpie pen to hide any stitches that you may see. Obviously make sure you use a Sharpie pen which is as close to the colour of your cinema as possible, and just dab it on, and it will hide that stitch immediately. Using the remaining flat backs, add these to the cinema strips that you've just added to the piece, and make sure that your ends of the strips are really crisp, really finished. If you're doing yours differently to ours, you know, you may have hidden them somewhere else, so you don't need to finish them off. What I tend to do is steam the hell out of that end and let it dry, cut it, and it gives a really nice sharp finish. Using the cut-offs of the cinema we had earlier from making the bias strips, block these over the tip which came with the block and let this dry. And once it's dry, put that in the well of the hat, measure where you need to cut it and mark this with some chalk. Cut this, wire it, and edge this with some navy grosgrain ribbon, making sure it sits really nice in that well of the headpiece. And then finally, you need to sew the base into the headband where it touches the base. And basically the reason why we're only doing it one bit is because we don't want any pull on that base. We don't want it to distort the shape of the hat. Once you've done that, sew the base into the main part of the dome, and using some white thread, stitch this into place, hiding your stitches at the top underneath your bias strips, and underneath hide it under your grosgrain ribbon. At this point, double check your connections finally. You may have knocked something, you probably won't have done, but you may have done. Check your connections again. If you have done something, then take the base out, check everything, making sure it works, put your base back in. Once you've put your base in, you are done. So there you go. Your introduction to wearable tech. Now there are lots of other different wearable tech that you can incorporate. You can incorporate sensors, movement sensors, light sensors, temperature sensors, lots of different things. And hopefully on this channel you'll be seeing a lot more of that as I learn, as I grow, as I figure out what you can actually do with this stuff. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Now if you haven't, please subscribe to this channel. I love all my subscribers and all my people that have not subscribed and just watch my videos, and there is a lot of you that do that. Follow me on all my social media, so I'm on Instagram, Facebook and Twitter. And finally, give this video a thumbs up and I will see you in the next one. Bye!